The greatest American marathon ever just took place this morning at the Boston Marathon, from a time perspective at least. Let's talk about it. Let's break it all down on this edition of the Last Lap Podcast. Alright, you guys, I'm sure if you've clicked on this video, you have already seen the Boston Marathon that took place this morning. It was absolutely electric. It was on ESPN, and it was a spectacle. It was great to see, and it delivered one of the best performances we've ever seen, really in marathoning history, from John Career, who ran 2:01:52, and I don't know if any of you else had this thought of when you just first heard the name Career populate on the screen, and you thought in the back of your head, wait a minute. Didn't that guy just receive a 5-year ban for doping? Albert Career, not John Career. Very small but important distinction there. Not any relation to what I can find either, which I find kind of interesting. But with that being said, he goes well under the course record. Second place, I'm going to butcher his name, Alphonse Felix Simbu. I could be completely wrong. And Vincent Kipruto also get another course record, running 2:02:47 and 2:02:50 respectively. You guys, this race was absolutely electric from start to finish on the men's and the women's side. On the women's side, you had Sharon Lokedi come in at 2:18:51. Lois, another name I'm going to butcher, Lois Chimung, run 2:19:35. And Mary... These Kenyan names, man. I even practiced all these names before I started. Still struggling. Mary Ngui Cooper. So, Mary Cooper. Forget the first part of the hyphen there. But they were the top three, running 2:18, 2:19, and 2:20 respectively. My main question once this race was over was what made this day so special? What made it so fast? What made it so elite? I think it was really telling in a lot of the post-race interviews that they posted from FloTrack and Citius Mag and other various news outlets, was that there was a definite tailwind and the conditions were absolutely perfect. I know we've seen in years past, Galen Rupp hopping into a porta potty in the middle and just this crazy windstorm. And by the way, he actually ran pretty well. If you hadn't seen, I think he ran 2:08 today. So very impressive for Galen, and he didn't hop into a porta potty in the middle of it. Or when Des Linden won, I believe it was that same year, just absolutely horrific conditions. And sometimes Boston can be a bit of a wild card when it comes to that. It's early April in northern United States and Boston, Massachusetts. It can be really, really, really crappy weather sometimes. And this year was just quite simply not the case. They said, you know what, this year we're going to create the absolute perfect conditions. We're going to create this amazing tailwind for you guys to follow. And, Charles Hicks said in his post-race interviews, I don't know if we could have asked for much better of a day other than maybe point the tailwind slightly so it wasn't quite as crosswinded. That is kind of absurd to say. And let me not bury the lead here that I talked about in the Open. The Americans absolutely showed out, with the top American being Zouhair Talbi. I think that's how you say his name. I looked it up. I practiced it several times. If that's not the case, then I apologize. He ran 2:03:45 for the top American time. Now, maybe some of you have heard of Zouhair Talbi before. Maybe some of you haven't. But I think he's got a pretty interesting story that is worth sharing and kind of noting here. So, he kind of where we'll pick up his journey here, right? Zouhair Talbi ran in junior college. I believe he's originally from Morocco, okay, and ran in junior college for several years, placing second at the JUCO National Championships in the 8K, running 23:57 there, placing second outdoors in the 5K, doing all this stuff, eventually ends up transferring to an NAIA school, which, if those of you who may be more familiar with the intercollegiate athletic system, that's not too crazy of a transfer, especially for maybe somebody who's international, and it's kind of weird with how they go JUCO, struggling to get a high school diploma, and then moving up from there to a real university where you usually have to be accepted normally, and all this kind of stuff can go into play. So a lot of times they'll go the NAIA route, which is just a little easier academically and maybe adjusting to America still and whatever that may be. But he went to the NAIA powerhouse that was Oklahoma City and won several national championships there at the NAIA level. He won his first championships in 2021. He won the 5K and the DMR. He then went and won the cross-country championships the following year. He then went and won the mile championships the following year and won the 3K and won the 5K. Oh, no, I'm sorry, took fifth in the 3K, but won the 5K and won the mile. And then decided to go pro, where he then notably competed for the country of Morocco. All right, he ran Boston in 2023, took fifth place, ran 2:08. That same year, he ran New York and DNF'd. In 2024, he won the Houston City Marathon, running 2:06:39, and took 10th at Boston and ran 2:10, and then ran the Paris Olympics for the country of Morocco, running 2:11:51. 2025, he comes back in the same race where Conor Mantz breaks the American record, runs 2:07, good for 11th place. And his most recent result was the Houston Marathon, which he came back and won in 2:05, which is really probably the first time I heard about him, kind of from an American perspective. How he exactly got his American citizenship, I don't know. I was trying to do some deeper research and how he kind of switched from Morocco to America and how that all works, because it can be kind of confusing from time to time, but we do not know the exact answer. At least I don't at the moment. If you do, please drop in the comments. That'd be good to know, good to share. But my journalism investigative skills still need a little bit of honing in that regard. So I found maybe a few questionable sources on Let's Run or whatever it may be. If you have any concrete sources, I would appreciate those. I'm not trying to spread falsities here. But with that being said, he was the top American. That is the top time from an American on the Boston course. 2:03:45. Really just killed it from the start. 5th overall in that regard. And second place, a real, what to me was actually a little bit of a surprise, was Charles Hicks, running 2:04:35, beating Conor Mantz's time from Boston last year. And he looked phenomenal basically the entire way. I love that he documents his training a little bit more, and he said in his post-race presser little mix zone thing that he's really like one of the first Gen Z marathoners, right, that's coming out and doing this and kind of having this different angle of the sport with his TikToks and all that. He's a great follow if you haven't already. He posts a lot of his training, but he was in very good shape. I did not know he was in 2:04:35 shape. That is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the American marathoning scene has been turned on its head today. I feel like we can say that without a doubt. Conor Mantz ran 2:05 here last year, and everybody thought that was one of the most impressive American performances ever, because at the time it was. But now you have a 2:03 guy, a 2:04 guy. Clayton ran 2:05, excuse me. I have a lot of these people that are kind of creeping up on what they thought was like the upper end echelon of American marathoning, and this race just blew the doors wide open. All these professionals came out and said, this is why we are the best, this is why we have been the best, and we're going to prove it all to you on a perfect day at Boston with a tailwind. Great day to knock 5 minutes off your personal best if you're Joe Klecker, or multiple minutes off your personal best if you're Charles Hicks, or Clayton Young, even moving from a 2:06 to a 2:05 guy. His post-game, post-race press conference I thought was really interesting, because I thought he would have more of a happy sense, but he said it's a little bit of bittersweet because he's been top 10 at these major marathons so many times, and you come to Boston not just to run a fast time, but to place, right? And he finishes just outside the top 10th at 11th. But I think this is actually super encouraging for Clayton. Obviously, he had an abbreviated 9-week build, and the man was injured for 18 weeks. That is absolutely insane that you could be injured for that long and still come back after a short build and pull off a PR on that course. It is absolutely impressive to me what he was able to do. I am excited. I think with a full build, he's going to be even better. I don't think we've seen the best of Clayton by far. I think he's easily, with a full build, a 2:04 guy, maybe even creeping into that 2:03 range. And obviously, we've talked about him a little bit, but you still have the American record holder just kind of waiting in the wings, waiting to get healthy. Conor Mantz, I believe, would have absolutely obliterated that course today. I think Conor Mantz runs 2:02. Easy. Not easy. Easy's the wrong adjective. But he for sure runs 2:02 if he's a healthy Conor Mantz. And I think he's right in the mix there with Benson Kipruto and Felix, who were battling for second and third, because that's where Conor was in years past. He's kind of been in that mix where maybe one guy breaks away, but then there's a group of kind of the chasers, and Conor's been able to be in that chase pack. And on this incredible day, with that tailwind, I believe he would have been right up in there if we would have seen any version of the Chicago Marathon Conor Mantz. That being said, transition over to the women's side a little bit. We've talked about who the top women were. The top Americans, you had Jess McClain, run 2:20.49. Annie Frisbee, run 2:22. Emily Sisson, also run 2:22. You had some other amazing performances from there. You had Dakota, formerly Limor, now Popin, run 2:24. You had Carrie Elwood, run 2:22. You had Amanda Versti, run 2:24. And, really just another, basically everything that I've said about the men and how impressive it was for them and how much of a banner day this was for the men from a time perspective, I believe fully translates over to the women as well. Very impressive race. I, on a personal note, was actually really hyped because Cody Clevin who was basically at the front with Dakota leading the race for the first 17 miles, happens to be my coworker at my day job. So that was really cool to see, and see just the American women were in it felt like for a lot longer. And that's partly because it didn't feel like the real front runners took it until a little bit later in the race. But you had that pack of 18 for like 17, 18 miles, really just stick in it, and there was a ton of Americans in that pack, which was super cool to see. And overall, really just an amazing day. Every year I'm kind of reminded of how special the Boston Marathon really is. This is a special event that we are blessed to have in the United States of America, and really just showcase, finally it feels like the American talent is finally starting to rise to the cream of the crop a little bit. You still had, your usual suspects near the front, but to see Americans sub 205, sub 204 is really just a special thing. And you know what? To be honest, I am so excited for whatever the next marathon is when Zouhair Talbi and Conor Mantz get to battle it out and see if either one can rise to the occasion and if they can really battle it out to the end. Whatever marathon that would be in the spring, whether it be Chicago or London, I really hope they don't run different marathons. I hope they run the same marathon and don't avoid each other in that regard, because that is the matchup we as distance running fans deserve to see. I am so excited to see where Charles Hicks goes from here. He is so young, I imagine it's only up. You got to think, when you're talking about your 2028 Olympic trials team, for a long time I kind of penciled Conor and Clayton into that. And I would still lean that way just with how Clayton's build was and how I feel like this wasn't anywhere near 100% Clayton. But there's so many more competitive, charging athletes right there. Joe Klecker, who I feel like we've been waiting for forever to kind of take the lead and take his spot in the marathoning world that we all thought he could coming off the track. It feels like this is the first day that he's finally jumping into that realm. I imagine he only gains confidence from here as he continues to figure out the marathon and fueling and all of this stuff. It's hard to get the marathon right, and the fact that they were able to is really cool to see. Charles Hicks, where he goes from here, I will love to see what marathon he does next. I would love to see him do Chicago and throw his hat in the ring there and take a stab at the American record, or if Conor Mantz is there, try to run with Conor or whatever that may be. But this changes everything, in my opinion, when it comes to American distance running and how they can compete at the top level. We're only going to push each other. We're only going to get better, and we're going to see a rising tide that is lifting all boats right now in the American marathoning scene. Gone are the days of 2024 when you had 2 people get the Olympic standard, and that's it. It's just Connor and Clayton, and we're talking, oh man, I really hope we get to send 3 to the Olympics. Those days are gone. They are no more. We will send 3. We will have 10 to 15 guys who hit the Olympic standard when it is all said and done. And that is an amazing place to be. I was so excited watching this marathon, and I hope you were too. I hope you were able to watch it. If not, I'm sure it's on ESPN Plus somewhere in the archives, and I'm sure it'll be on YouTube soon. So with that being said, thank you once again for tuning into this special Recap Boston Marathon edition of the Last Lap podcast. If you haven't already, should have said this first, but please consider subscribing to the channel, to the show. It has been awesome. I've seen a little bit of growth over the past couple of days, and I would love to continue that to keep the ball rolling so I can share this content with as many people as possible so we can push out the message of track and field and marathoning and all of these amazing distance events into the world, so we can create a better following for the sport and a more fun way to follow it. I want to report on track and field like nobody else does, diving into the stats with the passion and the desire I have to do so. I want to make this the sports center of track and field, and I believe with your help, it will be. And with that being said, thank you once again for tuning in. This is and always will be the Last Lap podcast. Let's get it.